up so badly that I may lost the love of my life because of it. I've made a lot of mistakes that would break my soulmate's heart if he ever found out. How do I fix this? Long story. I'm 21 now, and I've had a crush on this guy. Let's call him Jason, since I was 11. He used to play hockey with my younger brother, Dan, back when they were both just 10 years old. Dan and I are really close in age, only 16 months apart. I remember watching them both bring in their gear and feeling like they were the coolest kids around. I'd hold the door open for them, wishing them luck before the games. Jason, my crush, would just nod and keep walking. Honestly, I'm glad he didn't pay much attention to me back then, because I would have probably embarrassed myself. I got to see him for a little over a year while he played on my brother's team, but then he moved up to the next age group. After that, I had to move on. That's when I started getting flirty with other boys. I made out with some of my brother's friends, classmates, and a few guys from the neighborhood. It felt nice to be wanted, but really, it was just innocent experimenting. I wanted to be an athlete, but my asthma made that tough. I gave figure skating a shot, but I couldn't practice as hard as I wanted to. Plus, there was Dan, always overachieving and making me feel like I wasn't good enough. He wasn't big enough to do much in sports. We're all about 5 feet 5 inches in my family. But he was valedictorian material, always top of his class. My dad taught biology, and my mom worked as a hospital administrator, so they adored Dan. Me? Not so much. I started rebelling around 13. I let my grades drop, hung out with the stoner crowd, and did anything that would annoy my parents. Then one day, while traveling with my family to a soccer tournament, everything changed. On the first day, I was flipping through the event program when I saw his name, Jason, my crush, my soulmate. He was there. Most of the teams were staying at the same hotel, so I grabbed my friend, Megan, who was 15 at the time and used to smoke with me, and we went exploring. We strolled through the hallways, peeking into the lobbies and checking out any spot where the boys seemed to be hanging out. There were a bunch of guys trying to talk to us, being goofy, trying to get our attention, but we didn't care. We had one goal in mind: finding Jason. Then there he was, walking right towards us just like I'd hoped. I swear he looked amazing to me. He must have been around 6 feet tall by then, with long brown hair that flowed in a way that made him look effortlessly cool. He wasn't too bulky, just athletic enough. His piercing blue eyes locked on mine, and I felt my knees go weak. Megan actually squeaked beside me. I managed to say his name and ask how he was doing, but it was clear he didn't remember me. That stung a bit. I offered to get him a drink, and he said he was already heading to the lobby for one. So, we tagged along, and that's how we finally reconnected. Megan made a smooth exit, leaving the two of us to talk for hours. Jason was shy, awkward, and geeky, just like I'd imagined. And the best part? He seemed genuinely interested in me. He was so mature for his age, and when he walked me back to my room to make sure I was safe, I felt butterflies in my stomach. We shared our first kiss and became a couple 2 weeks later. We lived close enough to see each other, a 45-minute walk or a 20-minute bike ride. We talked on the phone every night for hours. I loved listening to his stories. He had this magical way of painting vivid pictures with his words. High school wasn't easy for me, though. Jason and I went to different schools, and since his elite hockey team traveled every other weekend, we couldn't spend as much time together as I wanted. We kept in touch through texts and calls when he was away, but it just didn't feel the same. When he was home, we'd hang out with his hockey friends. They were a great group of guys who always made me feel like part of the gang. I was the only girlfriend who was in, and it made me feel special. Jason also had a different set of friends from his childhood. They'd get together once a month or so to play board games or Dungeons and Dragons. That group, which I teasingly called the Pot Squad, didn't care much whether I joined or not, and that bothered me a bit. The thing about the Pot Squad was that they were all my age or older, but academically, Jason was at least a year or two ahead of everyone. As the years passed, the group evolved from board games to partying. Drinking games became the new go-to, and they'd spend nights playing pool, darts, and cards while drinking and smoking. Suddenly, they were more fun, and I became more interesting to them. Jason wasn't into drugs. He grew up around pot because his uncles dealt with it, and he hated what it did to people. His friends respected that and stuck to booze around him. But I loved the freedom that drinking and smoking gave me. It made me feel more fun, more rebellious. I knew it would drive my parents crazy, and that was a bonus. There were nights when Jason had to haul me out of parties, sober me up, and carry my wasted self back home. What I really never want Jason to find out is that I used to go to those parties even when he was away. I remember feeling so guilty the first time I went without him. My parents were driving me nuts, and I just needed to get out of the house. Before that night, I'd always have my usual call with Jason around 9 or 10, then just hang out in my room, listening to music, playing games, or texting friends. But that night, I knew exactly where the party was because Jason had mentioned how bummed he was that he couldn't go. He loved hanging out at that house with the pool table. I showed up at around 10:30, and of course, I was met with questions about where Jason was. I didn't have a solid answer, but the truth was, everyone knew he was traveling that weekend. I quickly realized that, and I complained about my parents, asking them not to mention anything to Jason because he didn't need the added stress. They agreed, and to my surprise, nobody changed their behavior around me. There were no flirty comments or anything inappropriate. In fact, most of them just started telling me more stories about Jason and the trouble they used to get into together. They'd openly talk about how proud they were to have him as a friend. Every once in a while, some random guy who didn't know Jason would try to make a move, but it was always shut down fast. I even started bringing some of my own friends to the parties. They had some casual flings here and there, but nothing serious. Sandy, for example, liked to treat a few of the guys as her playthings, but she was never looking for anything permanent. It was a weird mix of metalheads, skaters, emos, and geeks, just a bunch of misfits having fun together. We graduated in 2020, but COVID threw everything off. Strangely enough, the lockdown actually strengthened Jason and me as a couple. We spent almost the entire time together, alternating between his house and mine. My family loves him. They think he's perfect for me, except for maybe not being rich. His dad and brothers are great, but I don't think there's a girl on earth good enough for his mom's standards. But honestly, it's always just been about him and me. When the world started opening back up, Jason got to graduate. I didn't. I was a few credits short and had to do an extra semester. Instead of going back to my old school, I decided to finish at Jason's high school. Probably because my dad didn't want the embarrassment of me not finishing on time at his school. Jason left to chase his dream of playing pro hockey, and while I supported him 100%, I also fell into a deep depression. I'd get out of bed just long enough to go to school, then come straight home and sleep until it was time for Jason to call. That was the only part of the day I looked forward to. I was lonely and miserable. My mom eventually noticed and got me on some medication, which helped, but I never told Jason how bad it had gotten. He was already dealing with his own struggles, barely getting any playing time, so I didn't want to burden him with my problems. Once I started feeling better, I decided to go into nursing. Everyone loved the idea, especially since I was following in my mom's footsteps. It gave me something to focus on while I waited for Jason to succeed in his career. For the next 2.5 years, my life revolved around two things: school and Jason. He had some major setbacks during that time. First, he got traded, and then he didn't get drafted. I supported him through it all, and when he finally decided to quit chasing his hockey dream and go to university, I was right there with him. I got my nursing certificate and started working in long-term care while he dove into school. Now that he's back, it's been intense between us. I'm pretty sure we've broken his car seat, and this summer we backpacked, climbed mountains, and camped out every weekend. We're both still living with our parents, but we've made plans to move in together next year. Here's where I get to the heart of why I'm writing this. I don't feel like I deserve him, and I need to give him the chance to figure that out. Here's why. I never told him about the parties I went to without him in high school, or how bad my drug problem actually was. I never told him about my severe depression. Honestly, I don't know if I'd still be here if my mom hadn't stepped in. I have a social media presence that he doesn't know about. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and while I've only ever posted normal stuff, pictures of my family, myself, and Jason, I've also been DMing a couple of his friends from high school. It's all just casual conversations, reminiscing about the fun we had, but some of those talks were about times when Jason wasn't there. I haven't deleted anything, but I haven't told him either because I'm afraid it'll make him suspicious or upset. Things took a turn for the worse on Friday night. Jason got tickets to the university football game and invited a couple of guys from the old pot squad to catch up, specifically Ryan and Derek, the same guys I've been DMing with. Derek was driving and wasn't drinking, but Ryan was on a mission to relive our party days. I started to panic, got a little drunk, and spent the whole night trying to monopolize Ryan's attention. I was also trying to keep an eye on whatever conversations Derek and Jason were having. On the way out of the stadium, I pulled Ryan and Derek aside, out of Jason's earshot, and asked them not to bring up any stories from when I was wasted and Jason wasn't around. Derek nodded and agreed right away, but Ryan just laughed and gave me a nod with this stupid grin on his face. We got to the car, and I didn't think twice about where I sat. Derek in the driver's seat, Ryan and I in the back, and Jason up front, as usual because of his height. Looking back, I should have insisted Jason sit with me in the back, but I didn't. And now, I'm left feeling like I've messed everything up. It all started with Ryan dropping his pants and mooning the world out of the car window. Normally, it would have just been typical dumb behavior from a 22-year-old, but this time, he pulled his pants down to his knees and was staring straight at me when I saw his junk. I tried to look away and laugh it off, hoping to embarrass him a little but not loud enough for Jason to get suspicious and turn around. Ryan pulled his pants back up but kept messing around, playfully reaching out to me, and I kept pushing him away. By the time we finally got to Ryan's place, he was trying to slip me a bag of something. I kept pushing it back until Jason finally told Ryan to get lost. Ryan left with his bag, and as far as I know, Jason didn't see what he was trying to do. As usual, Jason walked me to my door. He gave me a kiss, told me to drink some water, and get some rest. As soon as I got inside my room, I broke down, crying uncontrollably. What was I doing? I was sacrificing myself, hiding everything from the one person who deserved to know the truth, that I'm a depressed, lying mess. The next morning, I woke up to Jason's daily, "Good morning, beautiful" text. I buried my face in the pillow and cried my heart out. That's when I realized I'm not worthy of him. I love him so much, but I need to set him free. He deserves someone better than me. I thought about telling him the truth, but honestly, the worst thing for him would be to forgive me. I spent the entire morning writing out my breakup speech, feeling like I was having multiple heart attacks just getting the words down on paper. I texted him that I'd call after my shift and then headed to work. On my way home, I got a call from an unknown number, and of course, it was Ryan. He started by apologizing for flashing me, calling it an accident. I brushed it off, joking that I didn't see much anyway, like trying to find a needle in a haystack. He laughed, but quickly moved on to the bag he tried to give me. He asked if I remembered doing harder stuff back in 2019. I simply said, "Nope." Then he started talking about me dancing in my underwear and rubbing myself against a guitar, laughing as he told the story. He said he and a couple of the guys had to wrap me up in a blanket to calm me down. I was pulling into my driveway, racking my brain, trying to remember if there had ever been a time when I did anything harder than pot without Jason around. I did experiment with harder stuff a couple of times, but Jason had always been nearby, unaware, but keeping me safe. Just as I pulled up, the porch light flicked on, and there was Jason, standing at my door, looking straight at me. I stared at my sweaty palms and said, "Ryan, that never happened." Don't ever call me again and f off. I hung up before he could respond, trying to sound as neutral as possible so Jason wouldn't notice anything was off. What followed was the most painful hour of my life. I asked Jason for 3 months of no contact between us. He angrily agreed, and I know he probably thinks I'm just looking for a fling before we settle down. But that couldn't be further from the truth. He deserves so much better than the lying, depressed wreck of a person I've become. If he can't move on during these 3 months of no contact, then I'll come clean and tell him everything about my stupid choices. But my hope is that I'll just fade away. So here's my question to the kind folks of relationship advice. How can I help him move on in the least painful way? I'm not planning to create a Tinder profile or go on a random date. Those actions would only hurt him more. My goal is to help him find a partner worthy of him. I'm at a loss for how to do that. Any advice would be appreciated. I'm not handling this well. My mom stepped in and took control of the situation right away. She held me, comforted me, and listened to me the entire day on Sunday, giving me everything I needed, just like Jason would have. She got me in to see a psychologist on Monday, adjusted my medication, and set me up with a counselor for weekly sessions on Thursday mornings. She even suspended me from work for 2 weeks. Technically, I still have my job, but I won't get paid until I return. I'm still not sure if I'm ready to go back to work tomorrow, but I'm incredibly grateful for everything my mom has done. My days have been spent in various stages of self-destruction. The meds have probably helped ease the make-it-all-end thoughts and taken the edge off a bit, but I could really use some happy moments. I've always tried to be a shining light in the room, especially for Jason. I've loved seeing his serious face break into a smile because of something I did. There were times I went too far, though. I remember a Christmas party where I wore glow-in-the-dark mistletoe boxers under my dress. I waited until the lights were dimmed and flashed him, yelling, "Kiss me under the mistletoe, baby." He loved it, but then I ruined the night by getting tipsy and offering mistletoe kisses to other groups at the party. We worked it out, but I clearly crossed the line. My counseling sessions are just beginning, but they're helping me focus a bit. I'm starting to realize that my reasons for asking for this break weren't as selfless as I thought. Yes, I feel unworthy of Jason, but as many of you have pointed out, it's because I've been a coward. I haven't owned up to my mistakes. Why didn't I just tell him I was going to those parties without him? Why couldn't I admit that I was ready to end it all? Why have I been lying to him about being okay when I'm clearly not? Thank goodness for my counselor. She caught me in the act of blaming Jason for my choices. Like I mentioned earlier, we've only just started really digging into the partying and my drug use, but I was putting some of the blame on him for introducing me to those people and turning a blind eye to my problem. She asked if those people were bad or malicious. Nope. She asked if Jason knew the full extent of my choices. Again, nope. Did he introduce me to the situation? Yep. Did he have any influence on my decisions? I don't know. Thinking through all of this is really confusing. We were just kids when I went after him. I had this idea of the perfect boy, and Jason fit that mold. That's what a crush is, right? Then I got to know him. Wow. He was kind, attentive, shy, but still confident. I fell in love with him. But that leads me to the next question. How on earth does a teenager even know what love is? All I knew was that I woke up every day thinking about him. When we were together, I would bring up topics I thought he'd find interesting, always trying to keep him engaged. When we weren't together, I spent time thinking about how to make our next conversation fun for him. Around his hockey friends, I tried to be the perfect girlfriend. I wanted him to feel proud that I was his and he was mine. I know that sounds one-sided, but it wasn't. Jason always shared his thoughts and feelings with me and asked about mine too. He just lacked some emotional awareness. He's always had trouble seeing the trees in the forest, so to speak. In a way, it was the pot squad parties that helped me feel more like myself. No, not because of the drugs. That was all on me. but because I felt less pressure to be perfect around them. The group was eclectic, sure, but that's what made me feel free. I didn't have to worry about being the perfect girlfriend. I could just show up in a hoodie and sweatpants, tie my hair back, and have fun. Jason always seemed more relaxed there too. He'd play pool, darts, or cards with his friends, and they'd talk about D&D, sci-fi, fantasy, and comics, the stuff I tried to get into but could never fully connect with. I'm more into murder mysteries, thrillers, and horror. That wasn't really his thing. The parties gave us space to talk about what we each loved, with others who shared our passions. When Jason was at the parties, I'd flip between groups. If there were girls playing games, I'd partner with him. But if it was just guys, I'd step aside, head out to the patio for a puff, and find another conversation. If we were apart too long, say more than 45 minutes, we'd eventually seek each other out. We've always been affectionate, so that usually meant a little make-out session. I loved those moments. When he wasn't around, I'd spend more time on the patio, smoking and chatting about horror movies. On those nights, I hung out more with Will, Jason's oldest friend, and his girlfriend, Amy. Will's a musician and poet, and he was usually the one organizing the parties. Whenever possible, he'd be jamming in the garage or basement. I enjoyed being around, usually a little wasted, just listening to the music and the creativity flowing. So that's where we are in my counseling sessions. Jason introduced me to these people, and that's fine, because they're the most genuine, honest group I've met. He knew I smoked pot, too, and I get it. It was my body and my choice. Where I struggle is with his aversion to it. I always figured it was an athlete thing, so I didn't bring it up much. He told me he grew up around it, and his uncles used to sell it. But that's as much as I know. I'm not sure if sharing more would have changed my choices. I doubt it. But it leaves me with questions, which is why I said, I don't know. I'm sure the heavy topics are coming up soon in counseling. The first 2 sessions have helped, but I'm a little scared to dig deeper into the whys behind my choices. I'm trying to stay honest and keep my mind open. Writing all of this out feels a little cathartic. I hope anyone reading this understands that I'm just trying to figure out how to be the partner Jason deserves, or at the very least, find out who I am. There's been a lot of other crap going on, but I'm drained and need some rest before heading back to work tomorrow. I'm planning to write down my thoughts on the heads I've dealt with soon. Thanks for all the support. I made so many mistakes the weekend I asked Jason for a break, and one of them was just plain stupid. At the time, I thought Jason couldn't move on if people still thought we were together. I was hurting, reading sad breakup poems and memes, and listening to some pretty sorrowful music. Hurt by 9 Inch Nails was on repeat, along with others. I posted some of it on Facebook and Instagram. If I could take it all back, I would. Thank goodness I didn't check my social media again until after my psych appointment on Monday. Seeing people liking those posts I made felt pretty morbid to me. I know they probably just saw that I posted something and hit like without thinking much about it. I do that too, but I couldn't help asking myself why. Are they liking the fact that I'm in pain? Do they like the idea that I might be single? I doubt either of those is true, but it shook me up a little. The worst part came when I read a message from Jason's brothers. They were basically saying Jason was a mess and asking if I knew why. The problem is, they posted it on my wall instead of messaging me privately. They're young, so I'm sure they didn't mean any harm, but I know Jason would lose his mind if he found out his pain was being made public like that. I quickly DM'd them, telling them I love them, but that they need to be there for their brother because I can't be right now, and I wouldn't be available for a while. Then I blocked them to make sure nothing else they said would show up on my wall. Hopefully, I caught it in time. In an attempt to calm things down, I responded to some wall comments saying, I'm really feeling down right now and just taking some time to get things straightened out. I thought that was vague enough to keep everyone at bay, but nope, FML. What followed was a flood of questions like, did he cheat on you? Did you dump him? Did you cheat on him? It was maddening. These people clearly don't know anything about who Jason and I are as individuals. Before I get into the main point of this post, I want to clarify something. I'm not a complete prude or anything. When Jason and I were apart, we had plenty of online interactions and even exchanged some racy pics and videos. I completely trust him not to share any of it, just like he trusts me. We did talk about the risk of someone hacking or intercepting the stuff. Those were the terms we used, not sure if they're right. But for us, the reward outweighed the risk. Now on to the main topic. Yep, dick pics. It's sad that this has somehow become part of the modern mating ritual. My inbox was full of messages like, wondering if you need help healing. Dick pic. Hey, hit me up. Dick pic. Come by the club tonight. Dick pic. Looking for rebound sex? Dick pic. Seriously, guys? It's like they're saying I'm a fuckboy without actually saying it. I get that some women are into that stuff. Hell, Sandy used to collect them like trading cards, LOL. But for me, it went from disgusting to comical to just plain sad. Some of these guys were even Jason's hockey and soccer teammates. I blocked them all. It's not worth breaking no contact to let Jason know right now, but I'll definitely tell him about these losers if we reconnect. That said, I shouldn't call fuckboys losers. They're really just guys with attachment issues. What I find interesting is how easy it is to spot them. Jason and I used to talk about his teammates, and the topic of cheating would come up a lot. Guys cheating on their girlfriends, girlfriends cheating on their guys. It was everywhere. A few of Jason's closest friends were definitely fuckboys, though none of them were cheaters, just emotionally unavailable. One of his friends, Alex, got cheated on by his girlfriend. She hooked up with some random guy while Jason and his friends were away. Alex found the guy and was ready to beat him to a pulp, but the boys pulled him away and calmed him down. That guy never came near our group again. The girl, though, she ended up becoming a plaything for the fuckboys. Pretty sure she's moved away now. After that, Alex became jaded. He started talking about women like they were prizes to be won instead of partners to build a life with. I tried talking to him about it, even called him out a few times, but that's something he'll have to figure out for himself. And yes, in case you're wondering, dung beetle. Ryan tried to contact me again. I had blocked him on my phone after that last call, but I forgot about social media until it was too late. I think Facebook's filters caught a picture of his needle dick. But what got through hurt me more than I expected. It was a picture of a guitar. I'm not ready to talk about why that hurt so much, not yet. Maybe after a few more counseling sessions. This post is getting long anyway. On a positive note, work has been helping keep me distracted from spiraling. Who knew it would actually help? LOL. I've also been walking on the treadmill and eating again, so yay me,